Welcome back to Hollywood Africans, the podcast which reframes, recasts and remakes Africa and Africans in the movies. I'm Barbara Angopa.
And I'm Amaka Ugwunkwo.
So we left off when Commandant was at the height of his powers. He is in control of a battalion of child soldiers. He's taken a town and he's so close to power. But when he meets the ultimate coup leader, we see that he's actually a very small man. Idris Elba acts the part when it's slowly dawning on him that he's far, far down the pecking order, even after surviving battles and torturing children. We see he'll never get the real spoils of war.
Mm. You know, it's interesting because remember along the way in the story, you hear him on the radio. Mm. Now, the first time I watched the film, I wasn't listening too much about what his bosses were saying to him on the radio. Mm. But when I listened again, they are basically doing what he's doing to the children. They are coaxing him and telling him how amazing things, the rewards that he's going to get, at the end of it. So that he's being strung along in a way that he's, stringing the kids along. Obviously, they're equally as brutal. But I do think that it was an interesting way, and actually it was kind of a slightly not obvious resolution, but it kind of worked. If you really look at it, you can see the sort of parallels in the journey between him and the children along the way to the end. That no one's a winner.
Another difference between the book and the film is that the child soldiers kill Commandant after they start losing the war. But in the film, they just walk away from him. Mm. And which really emphasizes he's become so small.
Yeah.
And the children basically take back their power from their abuser.
Yeah, I suppose when they know that he's been dropped, that probably empowers them, and then when their friend dies, well, not the friend,
Striker.
But the new leader.
Oh,
do you
yes.
remember who dies in the
Yes.
brothel?
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't sure if that was if that was a deliberate attempt on his life, or whether the commandant somehow kind of instigated something there. What did you think about that?
It was strange that he got
shot.
Yes, but from what I've heard about rebel insurgencies, the government side is always looking. They have spies everywhere. They always if there's a way to kill people.
Somebody. So do you think the woman could have killed? She wouldn't have shot him because he was going to be the new leader.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I kind of wondered if unless that's what the other people started thinking, that, and this is obviously what the young man thought, because when he was not dead, he was sort of dying, and sort of indicated that he believed that the commandant was sort of behind it in some way. Yeah. Which he may or may not have been. But that, I guess, plants that seed in the heads that this is the downfall. This is it's all crumbling.
Yeah, and then also within all these movements, because they're disorganized, there's always fighting even between themselves, even before they've got the power. Like who's the head of this section, because he's the one who's going to be in control of the spoils.
Yeah. You don't really see too much of that, which I think it would have been better, because there was a lot of battle scenes, there was a lot of stuff going on, but it was just almost felt like filler sometimes, because we weren't, because a lot, once we sort of stopped seeing things from Agu's very clear perspective, it sort of went into the commandant and became quite vague about, we're just watching them go into battle, but we're not really following the character, I didn't feel, of Agu. And I thought there was a lot of time and space in which they could have added more complexity to the character dynamics to show how these things work and how we get to that point. Because one thing that really slightly confounded me, not slightly, but confounded me, was I didn't quite understand why he was moved away from, why the commandant was dismissed. because from what we've seen, he was doing things successfully. So in that, what was it about? Maybe his problem also was that no one really explained to him. He thought he was doing everything right.
Yeah.
And no one said to him what he did wrong. They were suddenly replacing him.
I think something else is happening there as well.
What's that?
Basically, the person who's at the top doesn't actually want any competitors.
Right.
Okay. So the person at the top, he realizes this guy, look, it's Commandant who's in charge of these child soldiers, not him.
Yeah.
And if he realizes if he continues allowing this person to grow, the child soldiers are not going to support this man. They're going to support Commandant.
I guess it's like the yes person, the thing we were talking about before, that how the Commandant is looking for a yes person.
Yeah.
And maybe this leader has seen that actually the Commandant himself has stopped being a yes person.
He's not a yes person anymore. He's now got power.
And he's hungry for...
more. He wants
his job.
Not only that, he's come to ask for his cut already.
That's true, yeah.
He's already come to ask for his cut. This guy's not even patient. I haven't taken the country yet.
Right,
the guy's already come here to ask for his cut.
Okay, I see.
Ask for his cut or what?
Yeah. Because I guess maybe the brutality of the Commandant, the way he's so brutal and the way he's so on edge, he could try and carry out a coup himself. Yeah. I guess over... because they are very successful army, aren't they?
They're very successful up to this point.
Yeah.
And
so it's sort of that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Agu's grief when his mute best friend Striker dies from the wounds after the battle is, I thought, really powerful. And like that, a child's pain is always so much worse for me than a grown-up's. Then he walks to a home for child soldiers when the battalion finally abandons Commandant. And that's where he receives therapy. But there's a sense that this therapist doesn't really understand him and that her interest in him is almost voyeuristic.
I think we spoke about this earlier. So the difference, I think, between the book and the film is that the person that he goes to see is a European. I think is a European character. Yeah. And then this one isn't. But he's still, in his voiceover, indicates that she could never understand when I think he's still talking to God at this point, that she could never understand, because she's just I think he calls her a small, small girl, doesn't he?
I can't remember.
I think he calls her a small, small girl because he feels that having gone through this whole journey, he's become this big, big man, in sense that not in that he will be the boss of her, but he's just, he's now an adult because of what he's gone through, and she hasn't gone through that. Even though she's an adult, she's a small, small girl because she's never been through that.
Absolutely, and also like. Most human beings, hopefully, you'll never get to kill anyone.
No.
But he's gone through that already. He is a killer as a child, which I think in his mind makes him more experienced.
Yeah. Well, he's gone through something that he knows he shouldn't have gone through. And he's gone through a kind of initiation into adulthood that he shouldn't have gone through.
And I also think he doesn't think she can help him in any way.
No, I don't think he thinks anyone can help him.
No.
But then I guess he comes to realise that, that he has to try and help himself, really.
Yeah. But from my experience, and when I was working in Uganda, as a journalist, there were loads of NGOs working in mental health in northern Uganda after the insurgency ended there. And they would there's lots of all different types of NGOs, things like football for mental health or that kind of thing, to try to help to reintegrate former child soldiers. So the whole way the therapist is talking to the child does somehow ring true. But I've always... But what I thought is that they should have perhaps shown an African charity or an African solution for demobilizing child soldiers using African methods. So in northern Uganda, there is actually a system, a community system, that way of doing it. It's like this. I think it's called Mata Oput. And in this system, this cultural way of doing it, you ask the community to for forgiveness, and there's kind of, I think there's drinks, a bitter root that you have to swallow, and I'm not sure the exact symbolism of it, but I think that would have added a more weight to the film than the child's home. I can see in a way, like, why are you putting us in this child's home? Because in a way, it doesn't...
fake place.
It's fake because when they go back to the community, I mean, that for obvious reasons, a lot of the community will not want someone who has just literally been killing people out there.
Well, it's like the commandant says. It's like, they won't want you back.
Exactly. So I think more powerful way for the film to have gone would have been to actually been in the community and like, how do people respond to you? You were that cute boy in church, and now
yeah. I mean, I think the problem it had was its own making, which is that it was non-specific. It's a film that is very general about Africa, and it doesn't tell you which country it's in. We have no. I kind of guess it's West Africa.
I think it was
from the
something
language.
about a Nigerian border, but
something. But it was very non-specific. So therefore, you can't give specific kind of solutions like you're talking about, which sound very specific to Uganda,
to the culture,
to the culture,
of that particular place,
and how they believe. If you were in South Africa, you'd have a sort of that resolution system that they have for, so. It becomes very difficult, and then what you're left with is very Eurocentric view of conflict resolution.
Yeah, like in a child's home, it just doesn't really.
I mean, what you did get obviously with the children who didn't buy into it, who felt like what the commandant said was right, and they were obviously fearful, and then they started rebelling, and some of them ran away.
Yeah,
and then Agu chose to stay. And even then, you're kind of thinking, okay, why is he chosen to not run off with them?
Yeah. Because there's something still in him which thinks he can be redeemed.
Redeemed, yeah. And one thing I was really sort of wanting, and maybe it's just because, I'd seen his family at the beginning, and I know his mom is still probably alive with the baby.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to have that hope that he would see her again.
Reunion, because that keeps him going through the whole thing.
Yeah, in the book,
that's
very much what keeps him going, and I think that's what I really felt was missing. That really internal, especially having the voiceover. Yeah. There was a real opportunity to have that internal voice,
that
externalized, that really sort of showed what was driving him, what kept him alive, what stopped him running away, because he could have run away at any point to find his mum.
Yeah.
But he just kept going. But I think if his mum was, if he was trying to survive in order to see her again, and that was much, very clear to the audience, then, that would have made me understand that he didn't run off with these people because he was hopeful that he would see her.
Yeah. So the other thing I felt about the film is that there was a strange absence of girls in the guerrilla ranks, or all the soldiers are boys. Yet in many conflicts in Africa, girls are also abducted, sometimes to fight, but mostly they're handed out to fighters and forced to become what the news call sex slaves. They cook, clean, perform domestic activities around the camps. They also carry supplies as fighters are moving from camp to camp. And there's many famous stories of schools being raided by rebel groups. I think in Nigeria there's the Chibok girls taken by Boko Haram, and then in Uganda there was LRA abducted the Aboke girls.
Yeah.
And I think that Aboke girls almost got made into a movie starring Uma Thurman.
Well, I guess that would have really kind of delved into an area that we don't really know. I mean, what you've just said about girls actually joining the rebels or joining as child soldiers, I had no idea about that. And I think that is, like I said before, there felt like there was a lot of space in this story to actually put in a lot more complex layers, because I just think it's so general. A lot of this I could have read about in a newsreel, in a kind of newspaper article, or it just felt so general. It just didn't feel like we were trying to delve deep into a complex issue, which I think films have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
To kind of give us stuff that we don't really know about and help us to understand things we constantly hear about.
Yeah.
And that's another missed opportunity, I think, here. I mean, we did see the girls, who were at the brothel get taken, but you didn't see what was happening to them. And also at the end, you didn't really see, I think maybe they slunk off when the others went off, but you didn't really see their story at all.
They're just... it was
just kind of an add-on.
Yeah, completely. It was strange.
And that they were totally kind of helpless victims.
Yeah.
Because all the women were like that, weren't they?
Of course, men have their needs, and the people working in the brothel are serving that need, and they're being paid.
Yes.
And I don't know where else it would have gone in the context of a child soldier story. But
But what about if the story started with women, with females in the army?
Then the whole that opens the film to so much, because even relationships, do any of the children fall in love? There's so much. Like if you want to read about that, there's a book called The Aboke Girls it's about that story in Uganda I was telling you about, when the girls are abducted by the LRA spy. I think she's a Belgian or Dutch writer called Els de Temmerman. And it's how these girls cope when they're out there in the bush. So it was a trauma for Ugandans, actually, that story.
Yeah.
And every now and then some would come back from the bush, or they would be rescued.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to hear the story, and that's how all these stories were collected for the book.
Yeah.
But when I was working in Uganda as a journalist, I interviewed a woman who was said to be one of Joseph Kony's so-called wives. And Joseph Kony, he's the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army. But she was actually one of those Aboke girls abducted by the LRA. And when she stepped off the plane, to this day I regret it, there were a whole lot of journalists waiting for her, sticking microphones in her face. She was carrying a small baby. Now, if you think about it, she was taken away from school. She is carrying a small baby, and most likely she was coerced. As journalists, we didn't protect her. And that just went on to the news. Maybe she would have wanted to tell her story.
But she wasn't given that opportunity.
She didn't even answer. Her face was, she had this shock, that shocked look. Is probably definitely trauma, and also shock at all these cameras. Why all these people here? Because it's probably the whole trauma has probably been private to her.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Until this stage.
Yeah.
But it was voyeuristic, and I feel.
Was she with anybody when she arrived?
It was
Did
just
she have any
her
protectors?
and her small baby.
Really? Nobody else?
I can't remember if it was a plane or a helicopter, but she stepped off, and we were all told that she was coming back. But
wow, it's. Do you know who brought her back?
It would have been the army, because it was a long, operation trying to get all these children back.
Yeah.
And I think now that LRA is in Chad or somewhere like that. I don't know where they are.
I guess they, no. I mean, maybe at that point, the army wasn't thinking about protecting her, because I think, it's something where you would sort of recognise that actually somebody doesn't need the additional trauma of being accosted by press.
Yeah. There is that part of the film where they drive past there's a whole UN bus, and they drive past, and it's kind of like snapping.
Yeah.
So there is this voyeuristic attitude people have towards people, rebel soldiers, basically, but especially if they're children or even if they're girls.
Well, I think what was interesting about that particular shot was like, the army is sort of walking down the street, walking down the road, very long, probably a highway, motorway, and the UN vehicles are coming, and then this female photographer is taking pictures as though she's a tourist.
Yeah.
And then I think Agu sort of looks towards her, almost like, please take me with you. I felt, and then turns back and goes away. But I just kind of felt that it was like they were just driving past this problem.
Yeah.
To going somewhere else.
Yeah. They've got their snap, and they're going to get a prize for it. Sometime back later.
But I wondered if it was trying to say something about international responses to things.
Yeah.
I mean, we did see the UN right at the beginning, didn't we, at the village?
And also the soldiers were peacekeepers.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They were peacekeepers at the town. And then I think we saw some of them getting kind of attacked somewhere along the way. But, it was almost like they were just on the periphery of it all. But I think in reality there's a bit more going on there.
Yeah. So child soldiers turn up a lot in films about Africa. So there's Beast of No Nations, which we've just talked about now. But there's also a whole storyline in Blood Diamond.
There's also Johnny Mad Dog.
Johnny Mad Dog, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, I think there's Johnny Mad Dog.
And then there's Machine Gun Preacher, which is about a biker turned missionary who rescues child soldiers somewhere in East Africa.
All right, I've not heard of that one. Is that a African film?
I think I don't know about this one. This is something I have to see here.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Lords of War had child soldiers in it. It's the one with Nicolas Cage, who's a kind of like Victor Boo character, dealing with it. He's a warlord, dealing with warlords in Liberia.
Are they making another one of that? A follow-up?
Lord of War?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I thought I saw something about that, but...
And a few European films that also go over the African child soldier trope. So, but why is it that Hollywood is so fascinated by African child soldiers?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of there's a lot of sort of fodder, a lot of stuff there, and it's a world I guess people already are familiar with, and you can just keep dipping in, finding other things, other stories. And I'm sure a lot of these things are based on books, because obviously Beast of No Nation is a book, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that is adapted from books, which that IP is, if it's a successful book, it's easier to make it into a film.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a market for people who like the book. And I don't know, it does. I don't know if people just like that idea of this dark continent that's still unknowable and savage.
Yeah.
It's the kind of last remnants of savagery, that's still there. I mean, to be honest, when I think of Congo, I'm just like, ooh, could I, because of the impression that I've been given over the years from a lot of these stories, that there are places that even I, as someone who originates from Africa, would think many times before stepping foot in these places. And it's such a powerful thing, and I like traveling, and I'm kind of annoyed at myself that I am slightly fearful of things like this.
Avoid a child soldier,
wherever they are. Yes,
exactly. Anywhere they've been, just avoid that
area. But I do think it's this kind of unknowable. It's like a horror film. Why do people keep going back to watch things that scare them? Because it's familiar territory.
Yeah.
It's probably quite cathartic to some people.
Also, I think it's because a child soldier is the ultimate in horror, because you can't reason with them. It's just out there brutality. Yeah. And you can't reason with them. They're coming, they keep going, they're relentless.
Yeah. But it's a moral dilemma, isn't it? That you're seeing a child who is attacking and killing. And I think for there's certain audiences where it would be reinforcing ideas they have about how awful things are out in Africa, and look what they're doing to their children, and we need to go and save them from themselves.
True.
Which isn't clearly working, because they're still going on. They're
still everywhere.
They're still everywhere. And but I do think that their stories maybe tend to be similar dynamic.
And another thing, that the majority of children in any of these conflicts in any particular country are not child soldiers.
No, exactly.
So that brings us to the end of Hollywood Africans, but you can continue the conversation on Facebook, X and Instagram. I'm Barbara Angopa.
I'm Amaka Ugwunkwo.
Bye.
Goodbye.